Hello and welcome to this special CNBC Africa broadcast. I'm Chris Bishop. Now, EThekwini Municipality Mayor, Councillor Mxolisi Kaunda, is launching the Durban Climate Action Plan under the theme towards a carbon neutral and climate resilient city. A just transition that leaves no one behind. Now, this is in response to the objectives outlined within the United Nations 2015 Paris Agreement, which aims to reduce carbon emissions and limit global temperature rise. With the EThekwini Municipality's long history in climate change adaptation and advocacy, and in partnership with the C40 Leadership Group. The city plans to become the first city on the African continent to develop and adopt a climate action plan.
In absentia, we also greet you, sir. Thank you very much, Chairperson, for your message, which is indeed inspiring. It gives us strength as we launch our climate action plan today. My co-chair in Africa, Mayor Sowa, who also made an input which really gave us more energy to say that we as Africa, we are indeed at work and ready to execute our responsibilities. Mayor Mxolisi, the mayor of EThekwini Municipality and the chairperson of SALGA in KwaZulu-Natal, and many other members of SALGA who are following us today. Colleagues, we have mayors from different municipalities of our country and in the province. We have Mayor Makubo from Johannesburg, the city of gold. We greet you, Honorable Mayor. We also greet mayors who are representing their municipalities today, who are also present with us. The Mayor of Kokstad, Mayor Councillor Peggy Ntolo, Mayor of Newcastle, Councillor Mahlaba, the Mayor of Msunduzi, Councillor Tebola, our neighbor, the Acting Mayor of Duguza Municipality, Councillor Govender, the Speaker of our municipality, who has also spoken to welcome all of us today, Honorable Speaker, Councillor Tusi, our Chief Whip, who always whips us. He's been on me in terms of time as a whip, but we did apologize that we still had some technical glitches which did not allow us to start on time. The leadership, traditional leadership of our city, who are also present online, the religious sector, fraternity, the leaders who are there, the traditional healers who are also present, the senior administration of our municipality, led by the DCMs who are present today, the heads of departments, our director of C40 in the region in Africa, Mr. Hastings Chikoko, who also represented the Mayor Kaseti on his message, the business representatives, climate change committee members, honorable councillors of our municipality, members of ESCO who are following, ECOD cluster committee members, all our senior management, Durban Climate Change Task Team members, members of the media, distinguished guests, good afternoon. As the leadership of EThekwini Municipality, we are proud and honored to host this important gathering of the launch of the city's blueprint to mitigate the impact of climate change. Today's events demonstrates that we are a government that is conscious of the fact that we carry with us the hopes and dreams of our people, millions of our people, who want to see tangible actions and policies that promote sustainable development. Ladies and gentlemen, the action plan we are presenting to you today was adopted by the Council in 2019 to achieve the following objectives. Firstly, 40% reduction in emissions by 2030. By 2050, the city wants to achieve 80% reduction of emissions, implement smart electricity grid that enables bi-directional power flow and include large renewable energy sources, ensuring that 70% of electricity demand is supplied by self-generated renewable energy by 2050, transforming our transport system with the target of 50% of citizens using public transport by 2030. Expanding the network of electric buses and reduce private car trips by 50% by 2030. Expanding the network, achieving a 50% increase in locally produced food and reduce the volume of good quality leftover waste by 80%. Honorable guest, we are pleased to report that great progress has been achieved in these ambitious targets that we have set for ourselves, joining the world to adhere to all the signatories, as part of the signatories in the world, to ascertain that by 2050, we reduce the temperature by 1.5 degrees. To date, the city has implemented the following groundbreaking projects. The installation of solar panels in some of the buildings, Alford Road, Metropolis building, to ensure that we become the leading city in green energy efficiency, and greenhouse gases mitigation in sub-Saharan Africa and the continent at large. The green roofs at Monte Naika Street, which reduces the temperatures of buildings and reducing stormwater runoffs. Compilation of greenhouse gas emissions inventory to ensure that to help plan climate change mitigation strategies within our municipality and to identify the sources of the greenhouse gas emissions from both the government and the private sector within our municipal area. Buffalo's Dry reforestation project, where a total of about 786,894 trees and other plants of over 106 species had been planted in 712.18 hectares of land. Oceans Champs program, which we are implementing jointly with the city of Bremen in Germany as part of the climate change partnership. The project seeks to contribute to the protection of the sea and reduction of pollution. Sihlanzimvelo project, which aims to protect our ecology infrastructure by cleaning of our rivers and streams to improve water flow and reductions. Recently, the city invested over 380 million rands to procure 150 new buses that emit the lowest carbon monoxide. The city has also created the Durban Metropolitan Open Spaces System to protect ecological assets to high level and to ensure that all developments do adhere to the preservation of our environment. Ladies and gentlemen, some of these projects that are in the pipeline include hydrogen economy that will position EThekwini as a major exporter of energy production. Program Director, as strive to meet the objectives of the African Agenda 2063, we need to realize that pathway cannot be achieved without effectively responding to the impacts of climate change. Therefore, Africa must have a clear agenda of inclusive social and economic transformation in order to position our continent as an important player in the global arena. Ladies and gentlemen, the Paris Agreement on climate change called for the global shift to limit temperature increase to 1.5 degrees. To achieve this, there must be a global shift towards carbon neutrality by 2050. Anchored on building resilience and being able to adapt to changing climates. Even countries and cities in Global South will need to make significant changes if the ambitious objectives of this Paris Agreement are to be achieved by 2050. Colleagues, we are pleased that Durban, through our partnership with C40, has taken on the challenge to address the threats of climate change by developing a Paris compatible climate action plan that will pave a way towards a climate resilience and carbon neutrality. This move by the city is of utmost importance given the uncertain times we live in today. The recent COVID-19 pandemic has demonstrated to us and the world the fragility of the relationship that exists between man and environment. Recently, our city experienced flooding and increased incidences of extreme weather events, leading to the destruction of critical infrastructure and the loss of many lives, and disruptions of economic activity at large. The changes we are experiencing with the extreme weather patterns require us to be adequately prepared to save lives and minimize economic damages. We must ensure that as we proceed our sustainability that we need to achieve, we need to act proactively with agency to drive systemic changes in our city. Ladies and gentlemen, the Durban Climate Action Plan sets out a pathway to reduce emissions with the long-term objectives to shift from a fossil fuel economy towards one that is sustainable and dependent on renewable energy sources. The transition will be done in an inclusive manner to ensure the protection of people's livelihoods and contribute towards the creation of jobs. Distinguished guests, as the city, we have prioritized bold, transformative actions in the electricity and transport sectors, while also aiming to promote affordable clean energy and transportation for the poor and previously disadvantaged communities. EThekwini, as a signatory of the Inclusive Climate Action Declaration, will ensure that we eradicate poverty and increase inclusiveness in its communities. We'll strive to create better job opportunities, higher living standards, and improve public and environmental health for all. Most importantly, Durban will strive for a just and equitable transition into a climate resilience future. Ladies and gentlemen, the climate change emergency needs us together in a single cloth, as the global community requiring us to act as a collective. For us to succeed, we must strengthen our collaboration efforts and consolidate partnerships and ensure that we form partnerships between all spheres of government and the society at large. This will go a long way towards facilitating the sharing of knowledge, experiences, as well as transfer of skills and expertise between government officials, the private and business sector, academia, and civil society. Colleagues, it is important to note that our plan recognizes that the city cannot achieve these targets alone and will rely on establishing strong social compacts between government, labor, academia, and civil society. There is growing civil awareness on climate change challenges, and we need to promote active citizenry by engaging our people with greater focus on women, children, people with disabilities, and military veterans, and all the vulnerable groups. Our educational campaigns must be geared towards establishing a healthy and safe environment for our citizens, in partnership with the private sector, which plays a significant role in working with the city to build a resilient and reduce emissions in our city. Ladies and gentlemen, working with businesses through the Durban Chamber of Commerce and other partners, we will also accelerate plans to address industrial pollution from heavy industries and large-scale manufacturers as they tend to emit large quantities of pollutants. As the Vice Chair of C40 Africa region, I will be working closely with my counterpart, Mayor Sowa of Accra, to mobilize other African cities to join this global movement of looking for solutions and formulating strategies to deal with climate change matters. In this regard, we'll be convening a webinar in Africa to mobilize cities to take their respective role in the fight and managing the issues of climate change. Because of the high levels of poverty and inequalities in the African continent, occasioned by colonialism, we are at a greater risk of suffering irreparable damage from some of the disasters associated with climate change. COVID-19 has exposed us deeply that there are still existing and persistent inequalities in our society, and our continent has been on the receiving end of this pandemic. As part of adjusting to the new normal, we must build a sustainable solidarity economies driven by cooperatives and social enterprises and anchored on the empowerment of vulnerable groups such as women, youth, people with disabilities, military veterans, and other vulnerable sectors. Mayor Sowa, we must build on the solid foundation laid by our visionary leaders such as Kwame Nkrumah, Nelson Mandela, and many others, to unite our cities behind the common goal of creating a better life for all African people. Ladies and gentlemen, clean, breathable air is a human right. There is no negotiation about that. This is also a constitutional mandate that we are given as municipalities. Durban is committed to protecting its citizens from devastating effects of air pollution. We strongly believe that air pollution and the climate crisis are inseparable. Therefore, we need swift, decisive, and collective action to help mitigate the harmful effects of air pollution on our health and the planet. To this end, Durban is among 34 international signatory cities that have signed the Clean Air Cities Declaration. Program Director, this climate action plan we are launching today is a clear demonstration of the willingness of cities, including those of Global South, to act swiftly while making use of the current scientific knowledge. As the city of EThekwini, we are proud to partner with other world cities as we seek solutions to address climate change, and we strongly believe in the principle of peer-to-peer learning as we move forward. For this reason, we commit ourselves in sharing knowledge and experience with other cities in the country and in our region. As part of our climate action plan, we have developed a learning journey with our Municipal Institute of Learning, the MILE. We hope to use the learning journey as a basis for ongoing exchange and knowledge sharing across the continent. Through this continuous engagement, we'll drive African innovation and solutions to address climate change in our environment. Ladies and gentlemen, we are glad that Africa is not watching on the sidelines, but the continent is actively involved in the global partnership to find long-lasting solutions to these challenges presented by climate change. The future we want is possible, and we have the ability and potential to achieve a transformative agenda together in our lifetime. Colleagues, our actions or lack of today will determine our future. The wonderful earth is our home. We do not have another option but to take care of it. Therefore, let us all put our shoulders into wheel and work in sync to ensure that this plan is successfully implemented. Ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure to present this plan to our local and international community. Thank you for your listening. We wish you everything of the best. Durban is now open for business. I thank you.
Durban is a port city that is situated on the east coast of South Africa in the province of KwaZulu-Natal and is the largest city in the province and third most populous city in South Africa. It has seized opportunities to advance and embed the climate change agenda through the electricity crisis of 2008 that resulted in blackouts and the landmark successful hosting of the 17th United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, COP17, in 2011. This provided the city with a platform to promote adaptation at an international level, and the city co-organized a pioneering local government convention. This led to the Durban Adaptation Charter, the DAC, which commits local governments to climate action that will assist communities to respond to and cope with climate change risks. It has been signed by over 1,100 local government organizations globally. Climate change experts have worked tirelessly to embed climate into plans and policies and take advantage of opportunities that arose to advance the climate agenda in the city. This incremental approach to climate change resulted in EThekwini Municipality recognizing the need for a strategic response to climate change policy and governance in the form of a citywide Durban climate change strategy in 2015. This has driven forward institutionalization of the climate change agenda and subsequent work to establish a governance framework with high-level political commitment to successfully implement not only a number of citywide climate change strategies and initiatives, but establish the institutional structures and technical teams to ensure that these are driven forward. Why a 1.5 degrees Celsius climate action plan? Climate change is no longer a future phenomenon. It is already upon us and affects us all. There is growing recognition that it is not only an environmental issue, but also an economic and social issue. The 2015 Paris Agreement clearly outlines the international commitment to limit the global average temperature rise to well below 2 degrees Celsius. The IPCC Special Report, global warming of 1.5 degrees Celsius, further indicates that we are already 1 degree Celsius warmer than pre-industrial levels, and while we will face major impacts with 1.5 degrees Celsius of warming, 2 degrees Celsius warming is significantly worse. With the support from C40, EThekwini Municipality has developed this climate action plan that builds on the 2015 Durban climate change strategy to address the need for rapid transformation. A 1.5 degrees Celsius climate action plan is a city-wide plan that provides a pathway to transition Durban towards climate resilience and carbon neutrality by 2050. The goal of the plan is to ramp up the ambition and action that is required to limit the temperature increase to 1.5 degrees Celsius. This is vital to avoid catastrophic impacts, especially facing our more vulnerable communities. The science is now clear that we need to limit temperature increase to 1.5 degrees Celsius to avoid severe climate impacts such as extremely high temperatures, more frequent floods, electricity blackouts, droughts, and food shortages. While the task at hand is titanic, there is hope. Limiting temperature increase is still possible, but will require a major global shift in raising ambition in line with 1.5 degrees Celsius. Bold, urgent climate change action can have immediate, tangible impacts on people's lives, from generating green jobs to creating happier lives and cleaner air and water. Everyone, including state and non-state actors such as cities and the private sector, needs to ramp up action now. The Durban 1.5 degrees Celsius Climate Action Plan comprises of 29 actions and 149 sub-actions aligned to 9 thematic areas that provide a pathway for Durban to achieve climate resilience and carbon neutrality. 3 key focus areas for emissions reductions are emissions from electricity consumption, including energy efficiency, transport, and industrial and other stationary energy. Durban's biggest climate risks are rising temperatures up to 1.6 degrees Celsius by 2050, more frequent droughts, 1 in 10-year dry periods expected to increase to 3 in 10 years, increased flooding, 1 in 10-year floods are expected to increase to 3 in 10 years, sea level rise, up to 1 meter above current levels. The list of criteria used for prioritization of actions to guide the selection of city climate actions were whether they significantly reduce greenhouse gases, significantly improved resilience, and a higher return on investment socially and economically. With regards to energy, the city will develop a funding model for EThekwini Municipality that takes into account reduced income from electricity sales as a result of the shift to self-generation by customers. It will also develop an independent power producer support program to facilitate the diversification of the supply of energy pending legislation. Under transport, the city will continue to implement and expand the integrated rapid public transport network with a strong focus on transit-oriented development in line with the Built Environment Performance Plan targets. In addressing the issue of water and flooding, the city will support and develop ecological infrastructure that supports protection from climate change impacts. In addressing food security, we will also support local agriculture to protect citizens from rising food prices. In addressing waste and pollution, the city will expand existing infrastructure to enable scaling up of recycling in the city, including the establishment of waste parks, buyback centers, and drop-off centers. In the area of biodiversity, the city is to identify priority biodiversity areas for conservation that has climate change benefits. Regarding health, the city will develop and implement a heat mitigation strategy. And in addressing vulnerable communities, the city will facilitate the transition of informal settlements towards climate change resilience. Sisonke, together we can. EThekwini Municipality contributes only 6% of Durban's community-wide GHG emissions. A pathway towards becoming a carbon neutral and resilient city by 2050 requires the city to engage and partner with a range of stakeholders through a number of initiatives with a focus on sustainability. Hence, the city is driving the following initiatives and partnerships. Private sector collaboration. The city's 2016 GHG inventory and the GHG emission scenarios show that industrial and commercial emissions account for 52% of citywide emissions. At the same time, many companies that have head offices and/or operations in the city have set ambitious GHG reduction targets and have implemented a range of innovative solutions to mitigate GHG emissions. Therefore, to achieve carbon neutrality, engagement and partnerships with the private sector is critical. Active citizen participation. The municipality has partnered with the Department of Science and Technology and National Research Foundation Center in Indigenous Knowledge Systems to use an IKS approach to engage Durban citizens on climate change. Establish a green training center. Transforming the city to align with the 1.5 degrees Celsius pathway will require new skills. We cannot mitigate or adapt to what we do not understand. Identifying and building the necessary skills is essential. One way to promote this at the local level is through lifelong learning programs that impart new knowledge, skills, and attitudes to learners. The city, over the medium to long term, will establish a green training center to provide low and unskilled citizens with skills needed in a low-carbon society. Now is the time to act. Our actions today determine our future.
Okay, welcome team. Please make sure that you have a sanitized mic close to you, because I'm going to be firing off a couple of questions to the experts here. Are we ready? I think for this session, and because we are observing social distancing, while you speak, you are allowed to remove your mask, and then we can see your lipstick. Okay, here we go. So, climate change action is a multidisciplinary intervention involving many actors. How has this journey been for you as experts that have been responsible for the development of the plan? I'm posing this question to both Ms. Masenya and Ms. Hlongwa. So please, you can take a minute each to just tell us quickly how this journey has been for you. Let's start with you, Ms. Masenya.
Hi, am I audible? Okay. Afternoon, colleagues, and I'm not sure if we're still live. Are we? Yeah. And nevertheless, the journey has been remarkable, challenging, quite a learning curve. Not only developing, the actions, but I suppose the journey for us, especially being a pilot city, started right from the beginning, the conceptualizing of the program itself, and the launching of the C40 1.5 program. And the debates were so robust. There's been all sorts of, ideas, starting from the naming of the program itself, to say was obviously the objective is to make it what Paris compatible, and indeed by then I will recall that the objective was to reduce the temperatures to 2 degrees. And obviously, subsequent to that, we had the latest, report to say, indeed, we must actually be striving for 1.5. So to that extent, and if we look at the latest sort of, title of the program itself, it talks to the inclusive component of it, and which came about because of those debates to say, of course, we have this selected, 7, 8 cities, but would know that obviously, the cities, we have around 70% of the population globally living in the cities. They are, in terms of the electricity usage, the nodes, you have the urban sprawl, you have this migration globally. It's not just a South African phenomenon. So going in there from the global south, we had all the odds, stacked against us to say that you are this one city in the entire global south, representing all these cities, right from Cape Town, all the way to Accra. To what extent do you make your, participation in this fold, with all these European countries there, without really being seen as being made a favor, but making sure that you accommodate and you represent everyone out there. So it started there to say that, of course, we need to be bold. All these actions, they need to be ambitious, because you recall that this came about after the country cities, of course, had made submissions of their NDCs, which would know that it was felt that they were not ambitious enough. So we needed to close those gaps. The process has been evolving. The process has been quite remarkable from one sector in the city to all our stakeholders. But we must say, and this is what we've shared with our colleagues throughout, that we know, climate change, it's scientific, but at the same time, there's this element of it, of being, about activism, taking your stakeholders along. So that's what we've been striving for all along. Thanks.
Thank you, Itumeleng. Now, I will summarize afterwards. I know we're running out of time. Nongcebo, from your perspective, tell us briefly what the journey has been like.
Thank you so much, Sister Misa, for the question, and thank you, Itumeleng, for making that initial sort of input. But from our side, it's been an amazing experience. It has basically solidified or galvanized the work that began in the city in 2004 and has basically shown that the journey for EThekwini Municipality to be one that is progressive, one that is within its time, one that is willing to take risks. Especially in terms of the way that we have been supported by our political leadership in establishing a governance system that has basically assisted us in acknowledging the importance of this plan and of the work that we are doing. Without the leadership that we had received, we wouldn't be here today. We wouldn't actually have this plan that has been basically adopted by the municipality at a council level, where they're recognizing that there's a need for us to implement, and there's a need for us to take action swiftly and make those decisions and incorporated and mainstreamed within all sectors within the municipality. I think that's been my biggest sort of takeaway, in the fact that our leadership, not only from political but also from administratively, have been with us, holding our hand and showing us that there's strength in partnership, there's strength in numbers, and we can actually get this done and get it adopted and accepted at all levels and by all stakeholders. Thank you.
Thank you, Nongcebo. Thank you, Itumeleng. That just gives us a glimpse to, some of the nitty-gritties of what was done and how involved and complicated it has been. I think now I'm going to pose a question to Ms. Siphumelele Nowele. From your perspective, we would like to know how is the provincial and national government going to support the implementation of this plan, which is a plan by local government. Can you tell us a bit about any support that will be available?
Thank you, Program Director. And then in the words of our Honorable MEC, we would like to once again congratulate EThekwini Metro for this great milestone and for being a leader in the whole continent of Africa in terms of a climate change response. From a provincial perspective, there's a couple of places perhaps that would like to indicate. First, from a climate change response in line with the policy, the national policy that we have, which is the climate change response strategy. the province has got its own climate change response strategy that focuses on 8 priority areas. And we are also pleased that in terms of the priority areas that are mentioned here in the EThekwini plan and outlined here in the summary, there is a lot of correlation between what we understood to be the priority areas from a provincial perspective and what is also understood to be the priority areas in the metro. So for those priority areas, we are driving a process where we are getting support from the provincial sector governments that are leading those, like your transport and all of that. The climate change response strategy outlines what it is that has to be done by those key departments. And working with EThekwini, there is an opportunity there for some kind of support and flow of resources as those priority areas actually coincide with those that we have in terms of the provincial strategy. But also another very exciting program that we are running at the moment, we are developing the greenhouse gas inventory as a province. It's the first of its kind. We are working with our international partner, the Climate Group. We are almost at the end of that. The project is meant to be completed by March next year. This actually means that from a provincial perspective, for the first time, we are going to know with certainty where exactly our emissions are coming from, and we're going to be having exact quantification of those emissions. This then forms an important baseline for us to develop an MRV process, and we are going to be definitely linking up with the EThekwini, which is the biggest municipality, of course. And we've read in the document as well that they've already quantified their GHG emissions sources. So working together with the Metro, we believe that we are going to come up with more realistic mitigation strategies, at least that are well informed by science. And the contribution of EThekwini Metro in this work, this development of the GHG inventory is also acknowledged as the biggest municipality. We have been working together with them in that process. And as we draw towards the conclusion, we believe that it's going to be an important journey for us. We do have, as a province, other 2 critical areas of work, which is under planning as well as environmental education. And the other projects that have been mentioned, some are supported by the municipality, by C40 and so on. Our officials that are responsible for environmental empowerment, that are working with communities, will continue to work with the city in reaching the communities and coming up with this inclusive plan towards responding to climate change. From our national government, there are other projects also that are very important. We also work with our national counterpart in terms of that. I'll just mention one, just a couple. The city's Resilient Forum has been a forum that has been around for quite some time. Its plan or its objectives is to build capacities for metros, is to promote collaboration in certain projects. So EThekwini is one of the municipalities that joined that forum, and they've been actively involved in that. We will continue to be working through that platform to support the city of EThekwini. There is another broader program, the local government support program, that is also driven by national together with the province as well. It's also important, even though it's focusing on other smaller municipalities, but as we are drawing towards phase 4 of that project, I think it's going to be very relevant for the Metro, in that we are now getting to a place where we're going to be assisting municipalities in packaging bankable projects that can be funded in terms of responding to climate change. Would also like to extend that invitation to the Metro to say that maybe through that platform and through this particular phase, there is quite a lot that could be accessed or that could be helpful for the municipality in terms of enhancing the implementation of this newly launched climate action plan. And the climate Resilience Indicator Framework, again, is another new project that we are working towards. This one, we are saying that in the municipal performance framework as driven by National Treasury, there is what is called Circular 88, which recognizes the most important performance areas for cities. For a very long time, we didn't have climate change specifically mentioned there. And we are working towards doing that so that there is a recognition for the efforts that municipalities, the metros in particular, are doing in terms of the performance management framework that we have in the country. So we believe that metros such as EThekwini will get the due recognition through the changes that we are trying to effect in that area. And lastly, I need to mention that there is a climate change compact that we have in the province, and the metro has been very, very pivotal in terms of the driving of that compact. Its main purpose really is to be a learning platform, an information sharing and learning platform for municipalities. The other smaller municipalities that have hugely benefit from that compact, some of them have gained recognition in terms of the Global Climate Change Mayoral Covenant. We see that platform continuing to play an important role, especially as we're going to be learning as we implement this plan. There's a lot that's going to be learned that can be used by all municipalities in the province. So, Program Director, those are the areas that we have seen as very important in terms of us collaborating with the Metro in taking this process forward. And thank you very much, and congratulations again.
Thank you so much from the Chief Director. Do you want to give them a round of applause before? Yes, it's a very comforting to know that our ambitious plan is actually in line with what is being done at a provincial and a national level. I mean, there are areas of some things that we can leverage on in terms of implementing the plan going forward. Before I hand over to the program director here, I have one last question to our climate change experts here, both mitigation and adaptation. Well, we know now that we are in the middle of a pandemic, and most of our financial resources as a municipality have had to be directed towards fighting this pandemic. The plan that has been outlined here, it needs some dollars to it. So tell us about what support, both financial and technical, is available for climate action globally, both from the adaptation side and from the mitigation side. Just briefly before I hand over to the program director.
I suppose with climate change, it's always about being strategic, always about, as we've said, especially with the history of climate change in the city. We are where we are, and these are the learnings that we always share with our colleagues in the other cities at all times, that be opportunistic as much as possible, seize the opportunities, when they are available, and where possible, create them. So much as, of course, we would all wish, to have this ideal state where we have abundance of climate change. And you would recall that, the history of climate change, we just recently, and hoping that, of course, with the promulgation of the climate change bill, climate change to an extent will be funded and all that. I mean, to date, it's been one of those unfunded mandates, and we know the struggles so far, but we've been forging ahead, But to an extent, there's been some relief, and with the, the founders of climate change in the city, Dr. Deborah Roberts, the fights that she's been staging on the international arena around, galvanizing some support to, secure some funding for adaptation work. We've been more on an advantageous side from the mitigation perspective, but it can never be enough. It can never be enough. I mean, we talk about the decentralizing of, the energy network. Would know to what extent, the electricity sales are a cash cow of our cities. And we know what is at stake. And obviously, we need to mitigate and come up with some innovative, ideas to say, how do we, counterfund, those whatever losses. But the reality is that there are losses anyway, that we're already enduring. So in terms of financing, because developing this plan on its own, it's all good and everything, and we can always put it there on the shelves and have it, gathering dust. And as we always say that, indeed, the greater work is post this, would be very, naive and narrow-minded, and if we think that everything is all hunky-dory now, we done and everything. Indeed, the mammoth task is starting, and we've been quite aware of that to say where to. But to that extent, of course, the investors, potential funders, and financiers out there are aware of that. And whilst we were developing this plan, of course, we started thinking about the post-Durban 1.5 plan to say, what now? How do we get it started? How do we get the work to be implemented? Where are the opportunities? How do we unlock those opportunities? And as we're thinking and debating about this, COVID happened. And as we've just said, we know in the national fiscus, all the fiscus has been redirected towards fighting the pandemic. And indeed, it is a reality. We cannot say, of course, wanting to be all fighting for these scarce and limited resources. So there are a lot of funders out there, but as we know that with climate change, it's cross-cutting, it's about developing those, and even being, as a scientist, as engineers and everything, over and above those skills, core skills that you need, you also over and above that, it's always evolving. Acquire those skills, because you can't expect someone out there to identify opportunities, even those funding opportunities for you. Whilst you are this core scientist, but you need to find a way and develop ways of knowing how to unlock those funding mechanisms out there. So we've been fighting, it's been that evolving work, and there has been a consortium that has been set up, made up of a lot of these funding mechanisms in this kind of work by the likes of your ETHLI, who they might not probably contributing that much, but they understand, as to what it takes to put a bankable, because that's another thing, just applying for funding. But it needs to be a bankable project that makes sense to an investor. To say that, of course, we're comforted, we like that. But to an investor, it's about the bottom line. Is this putting my money out there? Is it going to make money for me? So you need to be creative. You need to identify those, to be innovative and creative, but be opportunistic. So we're working towards identifying that. And as one of the speakers said earlier on, you need to be agile at all times, be quick, We can't overemphasize that. Always put your ears and eyes out there and open. Yeah, I think that's the long and the short of it. Thanks, bye.
Thank you, Itumele. Any last words from you, Nongebo?
Just to add to what Itumeleng has said, I think one of the biggest points of leverage that the city has made use of is partnerships, and with partners such as Italy, with partners such as C40, with partners such as GRZ, we actually have been able to produce a lot of the work that we've done currently. But on the end of developing or allowing for funding to be available, I think the city since its adoption of the Climate Action Plan, has identified the need for allocating funding towards this work. But the one thing that is most important is not just for the climate change team to be the ones that are allocating these fundings, but it's about a cross-sectoral engagement of identifying points of leverage that we can implement action that is in line with delivering the service deliverables that they are required, but also responding to climate change issues in the midst. So as Itumeleng has said, it's about being strategic. It's about identifying those strategic partnerships that you can leverage in delivering your needs, but also working together with the respective sectors, with respective spheres of governance in implementing what is required, but also identifying those opportunities to add that climate change cap on and basically make that more resilient and more sustainable going into the future. Thank you.
Wow. Can we give them a round of applause? Thank you, ladies. So it is clear the experts here are calling for a change in the way we are doing things. Because you are a scientist, you cannot box yourself in that box. You need to transform and reinvent yourself. Nobody's going to get money for you. You need to learn to be strategic, to be opportunistic. And there's a call out there also to, those key sectors to then look at the responses that they bring, especially at a local government level. Like Ms. Nongcebo is saying here, have a climate cap on. Perhaps just climate-proof everything that you are going to invest in the public service. It's a mammoth task, but the call is out there that as we continue recruiting people to cities, we need to be upskilling them with the necessary skills, the emerging skills that becoming necessary now, and maybe investing in other skills that don't currently exist in the city. So with those words, I would like to end this session, and thank you, ladies, very much. If you can all come up front here for a photo opportunity, and then I will hand over to the program director. Thank you.
Thank you.